All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome again to Elite AI Assisted Coding. And we have today Greg Ceccarelli and Jake Levirne from SpecStory. This is going to be amazing because these two guys are really at the forefront of working with AI and moving from product to working code. So I'm super, super excited to hear what they have to share. Yeah, maybe I'll let you go, Greg and Jake.
Yeah, it sounds great. And thanks. And hi, everyone. I'm going to drop this resource into the Zoom chat for y'all. And
Yeah.
there's also going to be a repo that goes along with this. But so everyone knows, we're doing this lightning lesson in concert with Eleanor and also Isaac Flath, who's not here. They have this course coming up in October called Elite AI Assisted Development. And we have this great opportunity to kind of dovetail with their broader series of lightning lessons to kind of give you an inside peek into, in this case, product thinking for agentic development. So it's going to be, I like to say this, I did a different lightning lesson last week with Isaac. We want to make this interactive. We're going to be doing a lot of heavy demoing. Actually, Jake is going to have that honor. And so you can come off of, you can come off of mute or video. If you want to ask a question, you can pop it into the chat. Eleanor is going to be looking at the chat. Hopefully she also interrupts us and makes us stop and answer questions. We only have a few slides you can follow along. Let's get into it. So there's this shift, and I think we all have felt this past 20 years, right? Traditional development bottlenecked with, intent that people have to discover through traditional means and channel it to development teams leads you to this problem of, well, we can only build so much. And now if you've been following along, and this course kind of expects or assumes that you've had a little bit of a taste of using AI code gen products, because we're going to be showing you kind of how to use them. There's this sort of new reality, which is, well, we can build anything now, but should we, right? Okay, if we have infinite capacity or something that is close to approaching that, how do we direct our efforts? And so at SpecStory, which is the company that Jake and I co-founded, we're doing something kind of beside all these AI code gen tools. We're building these products that allow you to sort of save and share and learn and build rules for AI from your AI chats, but as a target to kind of explain how we do spec first development and also to kind of scratch our own itch, we've been using these processes in this product thinking to actually build Microsass, which is the purpose of this talk, 100% agentically. And it turns out it's actually a really great sort of target because it's easily understandable. Everyone will know these examples that we're going to go through because they have in market analogs of how to contextualize, well, if before I was going to do something traditionally, now I can do it agentically. What's the delta? So that's why we've sort of chosen this as the sort of target to talk about, is because it makes it more approachable than us telling you how we use agentic development to build our core products for the business. So who are we? Both co-founders of SpecStory. You can see here, you can look us up. We don't have to go into too many details about that, and everyone has these slides, and soon you're going to get the repo. So as a little extra, there's this repo where you can click on this link or scan the code, and this has all the material for the talk. So everything from the slides to the recording to the actual demo that Jake's going to take us through is all in this repo. In addition, there's some pretty handy handouts. So what we've done here, two things real quick. One, for everything we're going to show you, we have all of these agentic conversations that we saved with SpecStory, and we're able to mine them for a lot of patterns. So there's this patterns of prompting handout that kind of distills, things that we've learned from basically interacting with agents for thousands of hours that you can immediately sort of apply yourself. And there's also this lessons learned. Oops, it's not there. I'll have to fix that, but it is here in Markdown. Where is it? Here, lessons learned that really distills a lot of like tips and tricks. So it's not like when you're in the throes of prompting, but it's like, how do you think about this, and how do you break down things, and what are some things that we just sort of do all in one place. So definitely be sure to check those things out. Let me drop this link in the Zoom chat too. Wrong place. I'm like all over the place. Here we go. Okay, back to the meat. So what we've built at SpecStory, well, one, I built this agentic link shortener, and this is all going to come together in a second here. But we were using Bitly at SpecStory, as one, you know, might expect, to kind of brand some short links, track like analytics. You know, we're going to do some marketing, kind of verify that what we're seeing from, you know, all the ad campaigns we run actually result in clicks to whatever we're trying to get to. And so I went through this process in like 3 weeks and actually built this full product called tny.dev, 100% agentically. And this was kind of to prove to myself that it could be done, but it followed a lot of the sort of product thinking and jobs to be done that we're going to talk about. So I'm not going to go into all of this. I just wanted to expose it to you if you're interested. Real quick, this is one example of something we've done that's Microsass, 100% agentically. Another example is we were using Typeform to collect responses from customers who were interested in like our Teams product that we're working on. And also recently, some new development is like, we're going to build this cloud and we wanted to collect responses. So we've built basically a Typeform replacement, which is internal only. This isn't something that, you know, you could sign up and use right now, but to give you a sense, it's like a full Typeform replacement that we built agentically following some of these principles for product thinking that we're going to talk about. And then the last one that I'll show real quick is we needed an ATS because we were going to hire some people. And so instead of like, you know, going and buying Greenhouse or Lever or Ashby, I went and built an ATS agentically that we use that powers our site. So if you, let me see the right place. Maybe it's this. So we have this careers page, and this is like one of the job recs we have listed. And then there's this back end, and I actually put it in demo mode. I built this like demo mode for it, so that you can see like, okay, we've had like 52 applications. Here are the jobs. So we, you know, you can turn them on and off. All this stuff like modifies the front end of our website. And then you can see sort of these like anonymized applicants. There's actually real ones under the hood. This is just like anonymizing the data to help us, you know, solve this need. Okay. The fun thing is we're going to do this really quick. I'm going to only spend 4 or 5 more minutes talking and hand it over to Jake. What we're going to do together is we wanted to, so I don't know how many people on this call have, you know, worked with a lot of Markdown, but you know that today Markdown is sort of the lingua franca of LLMs, and we wanted a better collaborative Markdown editor. So Jake took it upon himself to kind of investigate, like, what would it take to start to build like a collaborative Markdown editor? And that's going to be the sort of like basis for the rest of what we show. I will say it's really important still today to apply product thinking essentials to agentic development. And this comes in 2 parts. One is taste, right? So micro-SaaS examples are great because, you know, everything that we've used agentic development to build, we've had to sort of answer these questions for ourselves. So for like tny.dev, which is the link shortener, it's like I built that because I wanted to use it because I wanted a way of using Cursor and Claude to use MCP to shorten tons and tons of links that like Bitly would never be able to provide me. Was it better than its job? Yes. Does it have an opinion? Yes. It's very API centric, whereas a lot of the other competitor link shorteners are, you know, much more like you go through forms, you have to do a lot of things manually. You know, I purposely don't necessarily make that easy because I was trying to solve a specific job for myself. And can you explain it in 1 sentence? Yeah, it's link shortening for Cursor in that case. On the flip side, there's jobs to be done, right? So taking the same example, you know, I was firing Bitly, so I kind of knew what I was building for. When does the job arise? Well, we're building tons of content as part of our like go-to-market distribution strategy. And so we have a ton of links that we need to shorten. Just to make this real, I'll show you my account and sort of like my links. Even things like the short link for the material for this course, for example, I've shortened like with, this product. Landing page for our CLI, some writing I personally did. This is like the Maven short link, so I can track all of this. So it's really helpful. So kind of checked all those boxes. All right. The insight is, look, if you can build anything, you need to have a frame of mind for why and how you build things. And this is going to become the differentiator. So, there's a lot of courses out there. There's a lot of material that talks about like, I one-shotted this, Airbnb replacement or something. It's like, well, why would you do that, right? Is it actually solving a job that, customers or potential customers might have? Are you applying taste? Is it opinionated, right? So all of these principles still remain extremely important in this new reality. All right. So what changes with agents? I mean, we've traditionally developed software in this way where we've organized teams. Those teams have sort of domains and sort of objectives, right? You have to communicate a lot of intent and context through meetings. And then often you find yourself sort of in this sequential execution mode where, you're doing product discovery and then you have to do like product implementation. Well, when you're orchestrating agents, the paradigm is fairly similar. And today there's great ways to collaboratively do that. Like shameless plug, it's kind of what we're trying to solve at SpecStory. But you need to make your intent explicit. And you do that through prompts and documentation, and you sort of communicate it to agents. The other difference is there's continuous availability. Like the agents never sleep, right? If you're using Claude Code or Cursor, you always have someone to help you implement available. The other thing is like you can do a lot of things in parallel. This is more of an advanced technique, but if anyone on this call has used Claude Code or similar, you know that like, when you're waiting for Claude to, discombobulate, as it says down below, it helps to actually have multiple things running if you could keep that context in your head. And of course, the cycle time's changed a lot. And so what we're going to show you next, and I'm going to hand it over to Jake, he's going to share his screen, is kind of this way we've started to think about putting like some words around the process that a lot of people have sort of independently, organically started to figure out. And in some cases have been baked into these code gen agents through sort of like a plan and execute step. We've just given it a name because as we sort of saw this emerge over the last, 6 months, it became clear that a lot of what was old is new again. And it made sense to sort of be able to refer to it as something. So we call it specflow. And really what it means is, look, you have a goal in mind. You have to brainstorm, sort of put words around it. Maybe you create an initial plan in Markdown. You kind of stage that out, break it down into something that an agent can execute, and then loop and iterate. So Jake, I'm going to hand it to you. I can drive the slides here or you can share.
I got it. Yeah. Thanks, Greg. So as Greg was saying, we're going to try and use this time to do a little bit of a hands-on example of what it's like to walk through this flow. And all the materials and the handouts have all of this in a lot more detail, right? In a short time, we'll end up compressed a little bit, but we're going to try and hit all the steps. And the important part about these steps is that rather than just trying to prompt our way through all of these steps, we're doing essentially a little bit of meta prompting in order to get better and cleaner context to feed in for the actual implementation stage. And so Greg sort of walked through these steps already. We'll hit them now in a real demo. And first, just to set the context, Greg mentioned already one of the 4, I'll call them advanced demo apps, because as Greg said, we've got to build demo applications to show how AI code gen and chat history preservation work, but it makes more sense to do them with apps that people are familiar with. And then, of course, we've got our own pain points. And so one of the pain points that we have as a startup team is that we know we want to preserve almost everything, right? We want to preserve all of our planning documents and our brainstorms and our task lists, but we also want to be able to collaborate on them. And so the thought here behind the app that we're going to extend called Tiny Office was that you should be able to have something that feels like Google Docs meets Markdown native meets Git. And that was the thinking behind Tiny Docs or Tiny Office. And the whole point of this flow is to not try to jump right in with one prompt or one query and go from there, but instead to spend a bit of upfront time, whether it's 20 minutes upfront or in some cases hours upfront, really crafting what it is that you're trying to build. And so all of this starts with a brainstorm. And for the Tiny Office app that we're going to take a look at, which is still it was just a weekend spike. It's not yet at the point of tiny dev. It's not out and released, but it will be. But the starting point was this intuition that we need something like keydocs for Markdown, both collab and publishing in a format that's universal. So help me think through why or why not for this intuition. In this case, I started this brainstorm with ChatGPT. You can start it anywhere. It's just about any LLM. Some of the more thinking and conversational ones make it a bit easier, whether it's Gemini 2.5 or in this case, GPT-5. But you're just trying to get some of these questions out, get past that blank page. And there are a bunch of tips and tricks that help with this, whether it's chatting with an LLM, whether it's using something like Super Whisper and literally talking out loud, just stream of thought, whether it's grabbing screenshots and dropping it into a multimodal model, but you want to just let yourself brainstorm. The result of this brainstorm is what I'll show you because it's the point that we're going to start from for this hands-on demo. So as a result of this brainstorm and then a weekend of going through the plan and implement loop that we're going to do right here, we ended up with a pretty strong prototype of a collaborative document authoring tool that lets you create new documents in Markdown. And it was meant to be multi-cursor, multi-user from the start. And so if you see, if I come in here and pop open the same document and start typing, it comes in over here directly. And that's whether I'm using it here in two browsers or whether Greg and I are both using it across the country. And so that is one of the core features for it to be collaborative, right? Unlike editing Markdown, for example, directly in GitHub or even locally and trying to sync it to GitHub. The other major feature is commenting, right? Like I should be able to come in here and, create a new comment like the closest bonds and have that show up in the way that you would expect and the ability to highlight and navigate through a set of comments in a document. And then the final piece is this ability to say, great, not only am I going to do that, but let's say there were some more details here, but I also want to be able to sort of publish this in a sense, right? Get this out to a Git repository because we use those Git repositories for other reasons. Like we might be able to pull these documents in and be able to do large scale analysis across them, run LLM pipelines or derivations across them. So having these documents always synced and always up to date in GitHub is also kind of a key piece of the puzzle. I'm not sure if that one came through, but that's the gist of what we've built so far in that weekend spike for Tiny Dev. And it started from that brainstorm that you saw, but that brainstorm then pretty quickly turned into a series of plans, and then plans turned into task lists, and task lists turned into working code. So some examples of those, just before we jump into our own, is inside here, one of our plans was the comments UI plan, right? So you saw the comments feature that we were just looking at. Comments started as a brainstorm, something simple, just a few lines like we need comments, they need to feel like Google Docs comments. Maybe they won't be threaded to start with, but you should be able to navigate through the comments of a document, right? That was the basic brainstorm using an LLM, or in this case, an agent like Claude Code. It's able to turn that brainstorm into a pretty solid plan for how we would add that in to TinyOffice. And of course, it requires not just having Claude Code write this for you based off of Brainstorm, but then reading through what it writes, editing it, refining it, and iterating on it. But the important point is that doing this is way better. You're going to end up with way better results than trying to take your initial brainstorm, a couple of sentences like, hey, we need comment like Google Docs, dropping that straight into a prompt. And so we figured we would try this on the fly and hope that that works well. But you know how it always goes. Let's see what happens. Let's brainstorm adding a new feature into TinyOffice. And in this case, come back here. Maybe it's the ability to bulletize, right? To be able to grab some text, or ideally drop anything in, screenshot an image, PDF, and be able to bulletize it. And so we might express that as just a sentence or even a few sentences. I need to drop any content and get 3 to 5 clear bullets. Great. But what we want to do is take that from a brainstorm into a spec. And one of the things that we've shared in the materials that Greg pointed y'all to is a prompt to essentially create a meta prompt, right? It's like a way to take the brainstorm that we've got above, so this one here, and actually flesh it out into a better working spec or plan that Claude Code or other agents can work against. And so here we are in Claude Code. I'm going to use this as my main driver for doing all the work, including the planning work. The first thing I did, this is one of the common patterns you'll see in the materials Greg shared, was load up some context. Like this was a empty, brand new Claude Code session. And then right after I started it up, I said, tell me how this app lets me add text to the current document, right? Like I knew that this was the feature I want to work on. And so we've got to get Claude Code some grounding in like how to think about adding bulletized text to a document. And so just asking this question was not intended to create anything or make any changes. It's really just about getting that context loaded up. And then from here, what we can do is take this template that we've got, create or update the spec section of this document here based on this brainstorm. And I'm going to get this going, right? I'm going to take this in, but we're going to then break apart this prompt here while Claude Code is chewing on it. So Claude Code is off working on that. But the important points here are to get the brainstorm that you want in here, but also to start to answer some of the questions that are going to help guide a plan or an implementation. So like, who is this app for and what are they trying to do, right? My app is for teams to let them edit and collaborate on Markdown docs. Great. What's the form factor of this app? And soon we'll see what's the form factor of the feature that we're adding, right? So this is a web app. We're just building a prototype, right? So in addition to form factor, you want to kind of talk about the level of fidelity that you want to go into. If you don't do this, then you end up with plans that have things like excessive testing or accessibility requirements, excessive security requirements, right? So you want to really let it know, let me get back to that. You want to really let it know whether you're working on a prototype or a production system, something between like a beta. And then one of the guidance steps that I like to use is to let it know how much I want to try and bite off at once, right? So are we trying to do a marathon session where the plan can span for hours and days, or are we trying to do something small? And in this case, for our demo, we weren't trying to do something small. Key feature we're trying to add just to iterate on, or just to reiterate. And then it is worth it to do some technology choices, again, to narrow the scope. It's kind of like putting in the form factor, right? Whether this is a web app or a mobile app makes a big difference in what the plan's going to look like. Similarly, for adding a feature, whether we're talking about, in this case, using OpenAI as the LLM for bulletizing or using Claude instead, or a completely different approach where we're going to try to programmatically extract bullets, right? It's kind of important to give that sense. This is where a lot of the research happens too. We're out looking at and comparing different different tools, different services, different libraries and packages. And then giving it some guidance again to scope it down. Here, I told it to just make a change in the docs app, not to the API. And so with that, what we ended up with, let's see, where did it get written to? So user rejected update, which came through as an update. No, there we go. Reapply that update. It's because I dismissed the comparison view. Claude Code gets fancy with its integration into Cursor or VS Code these days. And while that's applying, we can even read what it wrote here. So a minimal prototype for collaborative markdown editor, extracts key bullets from any content, bullet extraction, accept any text, content as input, paste to text, document content, or typed input, process the content through HTTP 3.5 Turbo, return interface, add a new UI component or button to the docs app for triggering bullet extraction, and an input field for users to enter their open API key. Yep, this will do it. Discoverable, but not disruptive. And so at this point, boy, just doing a reapply is taking a little bit of time. Maybe I'll
could
just
put that in. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, can I just jump in with a question? So when you describe, this is a really, I love this kind of spec because I've also been experimenting a lot with working with completely asynchronous agents, and you need this, and it communicates intent. But beyond intent, when you say something like add this UI element or handle errors gracefully, is there any additional context, like kind of custom rules or something like this, that this refers to, or it knows what it means to add a new element or what it means to handle errors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in this case, where we're picking up and adding a feature to an existing application, that was the major point behind the initial prompt that I put in, right? Like, I knew from having worked on this application before that we're going to end up doing something that adds in text to the body of the document. I just wanted to get it pointed to the existing code base for that context. But yes, when I was starting out, the biggest context that I was providing were examples of UI. So in this case, Google Docs, right? Like, think about Google Docs, specific UI libraries. So the editor that you see here, it actually took me quite a bit of time to research which editor we wanted to use as the underlying library for this. And the way I got here is because one of my favorite Markdown editors is Obsidian. And so I just had a bunch of back and forth conversations with Claude and ChatGPT, asking what the underlying libraries are within Obsidian for Markdown editing. It turns out it's Code Mirror. So like, there's just a lot of exploration that you do front in order to then answer some of these questions, like key technology choices, thoughtfully and methodically. Does that make sense?
All right. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, okay, great. We've got our bulletizer plan. It's actually a little less precise than I would like. So for now, accept any text content as input, highlighted document content to start, process the content, returns concise bullets, display, clean readable format, and give the user the option to insert it or copy it.
Hey, Jake, as you keep going, you should keep going. I'm going to voice over a little bit extra kind of extension of what Eleanor asked. Keep going. So I think one of the interesting lessons around, like how precise you have to be, should you have these things in the equivalent rule file for your CodeGen editor of choice? A lot of it depends on how you work. So I think like a Claude MD or an Agents MD or a cursor rules.mdc or GitHub Copilot instructions can be really, really helpful if you are like constantly changing from session to session, meaning you're like starting a new chat session, right? And you want to have this persistent way of injecting context into the agent for your project. One thing I've found that's really helpful, especially if you're using Claude Code, you're on Claude Code's Max plan, is if you keep a persistent session for long enough, sometimes like the, hey, I want to modify this part of the UI is going to be in that session's context. And, depending on the model you're using, if it's Opus under the hood or Sonnet or what, you don't necessarily have to have those rules. A lot of this is like trial and error. But I found that like if you are one that wants to work on a feature for a long time, you can get away with kind of, using that same session until it probably gets so large that you have to compact it a bunch of times. And there's like this risk of context rot that you don't necessarily always need rules, but you should try what works best for you. Just, from the field, I guess. So,
yep.
Back to you.
And that's perfect. Yeah, picking up from that. Okay, we're at this key point. So you saw, I mean, even for a demo, right? Like I didn't just blast through. I didn't just say, take the output as is. I was editing it. This is actually an important part, right? Curation, editing, refinement. Otherwise, you're just accepting whatever you get. And that's really what you want. So now we're going to take the plan section of this document, and we're just going to write out a task session and write out the clear, simple tasks that an AI coding agent can follow in order to get the minimal version of this feature built.
Yeah, a little bit more editorializing as Jake's doing that. If people in this audience are like Claude Code aficionados, you know that there is like this plan mode. One of the things that's nice about writing these things out to Markdown is that you have persistence of them, and you can go and edit before, hopefully the big bang will be Jake's going to take this edited plan and we're going to implement this bulletizer list, and you're going to see that change. That's the goal. But as you get started and you're not as familiar with like all of these, plan versus functionalities in these different codegen agents, it is really helpful to like do what Jake's doing, even though this makes for kind of like a less exciting demo in the moment. For your sanity, it will certainly improve it.
That's right. And that is an important point, right? Just a little bit of deferred reward, right? We spend a few minutes up front. Hopefully we'll get a better implementation. So settings button to the UI, header, open the API settings, the bulletizer button. All right, for the sake of demo, I will wing it a little bit. I'm missing API key error, bullet output features, company clipboard, insert to document, regenerate. Okay, good enough. Let's hope for the best, because it looks like it's clean and simple. Some of the things I'm looking for are that it doesn't try to sprawl beyond the task at hand, right? So tasks in the tasks section of bulletizer. There we go. Oftentimes, if you don't specify a scope, if you don't specify the goal of just sort of taking that next minimal step, you end up with a pretty sprawling plan. Maybe a lot of the training content that the models have seen look like large multi-week projects. And here we're usually talking about stuff that we want to be able to do in a single session. And so it's kind of important to focus the model when planning on the narrowest scope that gets you to that next step. And so this part is going to end up being hopefully the least interesting part, because we've put in a bunch of the work, right? The next piece after this will be to test and iterate. There are interesting lessons there too. Greg has probably taught me the most about using the AI to do troubleshooting, not just by throwing error messages at it, but asking it to add logging selectively when you're having problems, copying and pasting those logs back in, so you're not just working with raw error messages, but actually working with the output that you're seeing. But right now, it's hopefully just going to walk the list of tasks that we just had to create and implement them.
Maybe as it does this, why don't we, the audience has been pretty quiet. I did this lightning lesson last week on building product videos agentically, and there's like a lot of great questions. As this runs, does anyone have any questions we can answer now? And then we're gonna pivot to showing you this thing. Just we're waiting on Claude's transmuting.
I see a migration.
Oh, this is Brooks. Yeah. So like you have this spec that you've written out and it runs and produces the application, and then you go through a debugging session. Do you go back and update the spec based on your debugs? And then have you been able to, would you say like, okay, clear my history and then rebuild the app from scratch and then see if it works? Basically, have you seen, or do you think that it's possible that eventually you could just give somebody these plans, they could run it on their instance of file code and basically build the app rather than having to download the code or something like that?
A great question. Love that question. So that is the premise upon which we started the company, SpecStory. So yes, we believe that in the long run. I'll give some color commentary Greg could jump into on current state of the art. So yes, best practice definitely is to come back around and update all your documents. Unfortunately, all the AI agents don't do it naturally. You can create rules that will generally get it to do that. You could ask it explicitly. But yes, after it runs through this implementation, I will tell it to update this plan. And then, as you can see, we preserve plans for just the reason you were talking about, so that if another person or agent were to come along and pick up this application, one of the things they could do is go through these plans. And again, probably not as a human reading them word for word, but as an agent summarizing them and using that to load context for sure. We do want to get to the point where the plans alone or the specs alone are enough to create at first certain types of applications and then eventually a broad range of applications. But the truth is that right now, the best projects, the ones that are easiest to pick up and keep running with, are ones that have both the code, for example, open source, and the specs, open intent. It really takes both right now.
Jake, what's changing on localhost? Let's see.
Where we are.
I have like a request. If you could, and I don't know if you're prepared for it. So if it's like too improvisational, that's also okay. But so you have the extensions for the editor, and I kind of picked it up like I think I don't know a few days ago, really after I learned about it, and now like I never want to work without it. And I'd love to see how you use it, because I only know how I use it from the experience of the last few days.
Yeah, actually, it's great. We use it in a bunch of different ways. So the core day-to-day use feels like it sits in the background. It does its job. It saves history. If you're using Cursor, it does it automatically. If you're using Claude Code, you could either run it to do it automatically, or you can do a sync afterwards. But then the interesting question is, and what do you do with those, right? Because just having the history is nice. It allows us to commit all those changes and share them with each other. But the other really interesting thing you can do is start to do analysis. So just to set a little bit more context on what Eleanor's asking, if you run SpecStory, you end up with this history directory that will capture every single AI interaction that you have on a project, right? This is like the full conversation that I've had with Claude Code to build this prototype over the course of a weekend. And then what you start to do is be able to say, let's create, let's see, where are we here? Apps, docs. You know what? Maybe it's in this project that we're just working on. Apps, docs, my journal. There we go. Do things like create a journal of everything that's happened so that, one, you can share the log of what you've built as you've built it. But two, and maybe most importantly, you can get to some of the key insights and lessons learned that you can then use to either help others or to remind yourself when you pick this project back up where you need to start from. So this is an example of what we do with these. We're also building out a cloud product that lets you back up all your chat histories and share them with your teammates. So that'll be coming out this month, so in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So in addition to like this journal, which is like a derivative for, maybe yourself or others, we've also, I mean, one of the things that's challenging, I think, even in like traditional workflows today, where like teams are attempting to use like code gen agents, and what they're finding is like, an engineer who, maybe wrote 150, 200 lines of like clean code a day could now theoretically write 4,000, right? And, if you're using the traditional like Git flow or GitHub flow to, push commits to open PRs to review your team, you can spin so much faster in the inner loop than you can on the outer loop. And, if you think about the traditional code review process, a lot of that's around getting alignment about like why certain decisions were made or whatnot. And if you're not writing all that code yourself, it becomes really challenging. So it's similar to a sort of like chronology, but I think, having like a discussion guide to kind of, work at a higher level of abstraction to actually discuss like what's in that PR has been something else that we've used these chat conversation logs for, that have like helped us as we're trying to figure out how does this all fit in, and how does it sort of, how do we adapt our workflows to take the best advantage of, using agents, not just for solo projects, but also for, real production software, that we all want to have shared context and be aligned around.
Yeah, that's exactly
That's a working thing.
All right, moment of truth. Let's see. I didn't want to push the button without, the drum roll and see how much things work or break. But we're going to take the entire text, so a bit of text from Wikipedia on chemical bonds. We'll generate our bullets, and assuming that it got it all, boom, we can insert those into the document, and there we go.
Insert. Yes.
Yes. So to have gotten here with just a one shot that says we need a bulletizer that lets you drop any text in and get bullets out, the chances of one-shotting that are slim to none. But by having spent that 20 minutes or so up front to do the brainstorming, planning, review, and refinement of the spec, and then the breakdown into tasks, I think that's what gives you the chance to get a first shot implementation done correctly. We're at 45. Maybe it's a good time to come up for air and keep answering any questions that people have. I'm happy to stay on as long as people want.
Yeah, we can stay on longer, assuming people have questions. You want to switch back to the slides?
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, why don't you talk through these?
Yeah, we'll talk through some of these. We hit the first one, right? Like building everything. You saw me really overemphasize the fact that we're building a prototype and we need to take the next minimal step. I'm just coming down here. Ignoring taste is a great one, actually. It's easy to get caught in the loop of being so excited that something came out the other side of this. But like, really, there are a bunch of things that that are not great, right? What does bulletize mean? Is it discoverable? When I have my comments turned on, these now start to shrink down and don't fit, right? Like, there's time that should be spent thinking about not just, hey, wow, can I do a thing, but can I do it well? And that would be the next set of steps to take on this. Over engineering, it's very easy to end up down a path where you're trying to build for scale, or more often that the AI agent is trying to build for scale when you don't need it to. It's a good part of the reason why you should specify the form factor that you care about and the fidelity that you care about. And then for prompting, we've kind of hit quite a few times.
I'm really curious about this one, because this is one of the biggest problems I have when I work with agents, is when they do something that it works, it's correct. When I look at the code, I'm like, wow, I would have never written this code because it's like 5 times longer than what I would have done, which would also work. But now I have to maintain it, so I'm really unhappy about that. So how do you constrain the agent to sort of do enough, but not too much?
Yeah, this is a great question. So we struggle with this ourselves all the time at SpecStory. So step one is to understand what mode you're in, right? Because a fundamental question for any project is, does the code matter? And for certain projects, like a throwaway prototype, the code itself doesn't matter. For other projects like production cloud application that we're trying to build out, the code does matter because we need to be able to support and maintain it no matter what pops up in the wild. So step one, what mode are you in? Does the code even matter? If the code does matter, there's a combination of things that you can do. One is use of rules, right? So we do make use of cursor rules, in some cases Claude rules, but sometimes those, because they get just fed in with every single prompt, they end up being not as useful as they can be. So one of the more interesting things that we do is that Sean, our CTO, has created a cursor command that essentially simulates a line-by-line code review using the heuristics that he would use for a given project. Now, it's project dependent, right? Like the one that he created was for BearCloud, our Mac OS application, this one here. And I get to it really quickly. Window. Let's see if I can. It's not okay. You'll be able to see what this looks like. So, Sean created this code review command. It's relatively short, but it instructs Claude to use git diff and read all the changed files in a pending commit, right? So you've got uncommitted code you want that you've generated agentically. You want to review it line by line. And that's exactly what Sean asked it to do. What it feels like in practice, I don't think I have any good outstanding changes. No. What it looks like in practice is when you have outstanding changes, you literally just run this custom command, code review, and it'll come with an output line by line of places where that code does not adhere to our best practices. So this is one of the ways that we try to do it. I also know people that use Cursor BugBot to help with review. I know people that use Claude Code Security Review to help with review. But step one is just making sure that you're spending the right amount of effort for the type of project you're working on.
And this code review, you feed it back to the agent to follow up on it? Or is this like you go and edit manually?
You go in, you read it manually, but then you feed it back to the agent. It's almost like having preemptive reviews or comments on a pull request. It's your choice, right? If it's a small tweak, like a naming tweak, you could do it manually. For me, I mean, I haven't been a professional software engineer for a decade and a half, so I use Claude Code for everything, probably overuse it, and even if it's a small change, I'll have it make it.
I think you have a really good point to like about sometimes the code doesn't matter. If it works and you're going to like throw it away or have a next version or this is just a prototype, then you need to kind of develop this emotional detachment from the code and not care so much if it's not exactly your flavor of how you'd program this.
That's right. Yeah, that's the biggest one. Greg.
We have a good question from Muhammad in the audience. It's like a two-parter. I'll read it real quick. One is, how do you write a good spec for AI agents? Any suggestions? And two is, how do you let the AI agent track what's being done? In case you use another AI agent later, do you track this in example, like in a separate MD file? Or like to track progress, or do you use a better approach? Why don't you answer the second one first? Because that's like, I think that's pretty straightforward and you were actually doing it.
Yeah. The short answer on that one is like, when you're prompting, just install SpecStory. It'll keep track of every conversation that you've had, like oldest to newest. And if you want to be able to feed that back in, you can literally read through or search through any of this and be able to feed that back in to a new agent. And or you can also ask priming questions of any agent in order to get the code primed in there. So like in both cases, it's as simple as doing something like, let's see, no, because I already did that. Quit. Claude, and you can just make reference to, let's see if I've got one here. Oh no, this isn't product thinking. And this one where I've got the full, no, actually it should be here.
Well, actually, what I was going to say is, I don't know if you asked Claude to do this, but in your bulletizer plan, right, you did break out tasks. And, there's a lot of different approaches to how you might want to break out tasks. Should they be a separate file? Should it be in that sort of main plan file? But one thing, Mohammed, that we have done a lot, in addition to what Jake said, is we've actually had the agent, as it implements, kind of keep a log of the implementation status in that same plan that you're from.
Yeah, that's a good one. So good reason to do it automatically. I will resume that last chat and I'll say date bulletizer plan based on what you just built.
And in this case, if that's something that you want to do all the time, you could easily materialize this to your Claude MD, so that every time, you could basically make sure that that context was there. You don't have to go and say that, every single time. Sometimes kind of stochastic, it's not always going to work. But a lot of these best practices, Jake has this up, they're going to be when do you use commands? When do you use Claude MD? What's the best use case? You sort of learn over time. I think on that first question, we probably deserve, it probably deserves a better guide than we've ever put out. But I'll give you my high level on how to write a spec for agents that I've found to be really useful. Some of this is in the top 25 lessons learned, which is in the repo that we shared at the very get-go. But you should definitely brainstorm out loud, using your voice as the sort of highest throughput transfer mechanism to get your idea out and let it be messy. So we use Super Whisper or Whisper Flow to kind of talk through the objective for whatever it is we want to build. Let's say it's a feature for an existing brownfield app, and get that out. Because what you can do with that, once you've gotten sort of your voice to text, is use other LLMs to sort of shape it into an actual goal with a set of, core functionality and potentially tasks to implement. I think if I'm just talking abstractly, and it's hard to say what's good or bad because it completely depends on what you're trying to achieve with what specificity. Often I think if I think about my good specs that have kind of been Jake's, that have been able to maybe one-shot something, or even if they didn't one-shot, they were at least very easy to understand, is, once you've gotten the idea out, kind of framing the context that the AI agent needs. So does it need to go and look at, part of the code base that exists, maybe prior sessions for context about where it was if you'd started a new session. So a section for context, then a goal. It's always great to give, I think, LLMs a goal. This is what I want to achieve. This is how I actually would measure that goal was, successfully implemented. I don't mean metrics. I mean what was that functionality trying to do? And then breaking down the actual task to implementation. All of this you don't have to do yourself. I think we use a lot of meta prompting. LLMs are actually really good at helping you write prompts. And so if you sort of put yourself in the mindset of, the person who needs to orchestrate agents, you can express what you want to achieve, kind of give it that goal, break down tasks to the extent that you already know, and then meta prompt the agent to say, refine this spec, like Jake did actually as he was typing, because an AI coding agent is going to implement it, and go through a couple cycles of that. That was a lot of words. The point is, I think goal, tasks, constraints, and then as much implementation detail as it makes sense to include in that spec, the better. But your spec shouldn't look like a PRD as traditionally known. It's very different. This is more like a technical requirement stock than a PRD, is what we found to work best.
That's right. Great.
Quick use.
Jake, do you want to flash up the last 2 slides, like the one that plugs
Sure,
Eleanor's course.
You know where to find us.
Yeah, so that
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
As you've heard, Eleanor and Isaac have a great course coming up, and so highly recommend it. And don't forget to get your 30% off for joining this lightning lesson. And then for as far as following along with me and Greg, you can always find us on LinkedIn at SpecStory, Twitter at SpecStory AI, or you can reach out to us personally. I think we put our contacts in here somewhere, but we're always online.
And if I can add to that, just to repeat, go to get to SpecStory and get the extension and install it. Because if you like, my experience was I installed it and like a few hours later, I was like, how did I ever work without this? All the data you generate, the conversations, the sort of this iteratively refined understanding of what you do, this is a gold mine. You don't want all of this to evaporate the minute you finish the session. So highly recommended.
Thank you for saying as much. Yes, we use it every day, and tens of thousands of others do as well.
All right.
stay tuned. Thanks so much.
Greg. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us.